This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, May 9th, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on context, help each other understand.
Today, Andy Beach talks about why the cost of chips may not slow down AI, and a dead man testifies on his own behalf in court. Yes, this is AI.
I'm not AI, though. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm not AI either. I'm Shannon Morse.
Let's start with what you need to know with the big story. A Superior Court judge in Maricopa County, Arizona, permitted the family of a shooting victim to submit a video of the victim generated by multiple models, actually. Gabriel Horcasitas had shot and killed 37-year-old Christopher Pelkey in November 2021 after a road altercation, road rage kind of thing. During sentencing, it is normal for family and friends to submit statements on behalf of the victim to kind of testify to their character and inform the judge who the person was. In Arizona, victims can give impact statements in any digital format. So, as far as we know, this is just another digital format. Pelkey's sister is a software product consultant called Stacey Wales. Stacey Wales wrote a script, and her husband, who works in creating human-like avatars, generated the video of Pelkey reading it. The NBC News story about this implies that the husband was a little reluctant to do this, but in the end, they made it work. They didn't simulate Pelkey. She wrote the script, and then they used a single image to create the video. So it's a little herky-jerky. There are better video generators out there, but this is done from a single image. They edited it to remove glasses, edit a logo off his hat, change his outfit, trim his beard, for court appearances. And then they used a tool, which we don't know, probably something like 11 Labs, if not actually 11 Labs, to recreate his voice, reading the script synced with the video. The video included actual video of Pelkey speaking while alive. So there were clips of him when he was alive talking to people, along with the generated video.
To Gabriel Horcasitas, the man who shot me, it is a shame we encountered each other that day in those circumstances. In another life, we probably could have been friends. I believe in forgiveness and in God who forgives. I always have, and I still do.
So that is the script written by Stacey Wales, but read in a simulated voice of Pelkey. The family, despite the plea for forgiveness, asked for the maximum sentence of 10 and a half years, which was given. There were nearly 50 letters from friends and family as well, so this wasn't the only thing the judge was relying on. And the judge said the video echoed the sentiments in those 50 letters. Horcasitas will appeal the sentence, and his lawyers are going to ask whether the judge improperly relied on the video in sentencing, whether that video was inflammatory. Shannon, the audio probably better than the video in this case, and it's not trying to pretend to be something it's not. They weren't trying to hide the fact that this was simulated. They were just trying to make an impact by doing this. I don't know what you think about this. I thought it was interesting and not particularly, to be honest, not particularly a problem. What do you think?
It made me extremely uncomfortable to watch it. And I think part of the reason is because I'm very aware of being a YouTuber, having a public presence. Mm-hmm. And if something were to happen to me, I try to put myself in those kind of shoes. Like if I was a victim of this kind of tragedy that these people are experiencing, would I want somebody to turn me into a video and give a statement after something had happened?
Yeah.
And to me, that would make me very uncomfortable because even though family and friends know you really well, they may not know how you would act after something like that would have happened. Like, would Ghost Me be forgiving, or would Ghost Me be extremely angry? And you really don't know. So personally, I would not want something like this to be okay, to be legal. And it sounds like currently the Arizona laws are very vague in the fact that they did allow this. So maybe there's something there about legal restrictions in the court given that AI is relatively new and these kind of processes need to be put in place.
Yeah, this is another example of the law never contemplated this when it said digital format, right? It kind of assumed digital format would always mean reality, not simulated. So it'll be interesting what the judge says on appeal about this. I was coming at it almost entirely from the should it be admissible? Did it hurt Horcasitas case? And to me, that's why I said, like, I don't think there's a problem with this because it was fairly consistent with the letters. I'm not sure that this would inordinately sway the judge. And in fact, it was much more forgiving than what the family was saying.
It was,
and the family was angrier. So if anything, it wasn't helping their case as much as it would have been. Everyone in this family seems to think, yeah, that's probably what he would have said, at least from the reports from the AP and NBC News. But you bring up an interesting point that I hadn't even thought of, which is, what does Christopher Pelkey think, right? He never got a chance to say, yes, you may use my image, or yes, you may use it, but here are the rules about that. So I don't know if this sort of thing, personally, I don't know if it should be illegal, but maybe you should have a right to say, after my death, please don't simulate me. It's something we've never had to think about before.
Yeah, we've never had to think about that before. And maybe now that should be something that when you create a will or a living statement or something like that, we should start considering those items and put those into our statements.
Yeah. And both ways, right? If you're like Shannon and you're like, I'm uncomfortable with this, I don't want anybody simulating me after I'm gone because I don't get to control what they say. You obviously should put that in, but maybe someone out there is like, oh no, I want you to simulate me under these conditions. And then you stipulate what those conditions are and, or maybe leave a script. I don't know. Something like that. So, it's akin to all those mystery movies where someone has recorded a message to be played after they're dead, except in this case, it's AI.
Well, it's definitely a really interesting story. And this is something that I feel like is going to impact court cases in the future, especially if this is a option going forward. So we live in a very strange time now, don't we?
And I think that's what a lot of people were concerned about is this is not trying to pretend that it's Pelkey.
Right.
It is, it's not trying to fool anybody. It's also cut in with actual video of the living Pelkey. So to me, that kind of tempered it a little bit of like, they're showing him speaking on his own so that you can see that the simulated version isn't wildly different because what he's saying in the recorded videos are fairly similar. So it's really just window dressing. But there's a slippery slope there where somebody's like, well, they did that. Now I'm gonna have him make an impassioned plea, or I'm gonna try to prey on the court's sympathies, and so it becomes a question of should you allow it at all, even if this is the best use case of it. Not every case will be in the future.
Well, DTNS is made possible by you, our listeners. Special thanks to Paul Reese, Tim Deputy, Brandon Brooks, and our newest patron, Craig H.
Hey,
yay! Thank you.
There's more we need to know today. Let's get to the briefs.
Huawei's license to sell its laptops with Windows ran out in March, and it has now announced its first laptop running its own Harmony OS 5, also sometimes called Harmony OS Next. This comes with Huawei's virtual assistant, Celia. It also runs WPS for productivity and Alibaba's Ding Talk for Teams-like functions. Harmony OS is used on Huawei's mobile devices, and the mobile apps can run on a laptop as well. The laptop launches on May 19th.
Plenty of competitors, including Lenovo, can sell their laptops with Windows in China. So it will be it'll be an uphill battle for Huawei to convince people to use the Harmony OS, but maybe there's some Chromebook-like, it's not quite as efficient as Chrome OS, but some Chromebook-like appeal to having those mobile apps there. But again, Harmony OS on the mobile device has a limited number of apps because it's coming from scratch as well. The Ottawa Hospital, that's the name of it, the Ottawa Hospital, was the first hospital in Canada to try Microsoft's DAX Copilot, which is integrated with the electronic health record platform Epic. DAX Copilot uses a mobile app to take doctor-patient conversations and draft clinical notes. So it records the conversations and then it creates the notes. The doctor then looks over the notes. There are things like summary of symptoms, diagnosis, treatment, follow-ups, all of that, and can finalize them. Just makes it faster for the doctor to make their notes. Microsoft trained the model on curated clinical data and further optimized models by specialty. So if you're OB-GYN, there's an OB-GYN model for your conversations. As a result of the trial, doctors saved an average of 7 minutes per encounter and were able to see more patients per shift. And I think importantly, engage more directly with them. Doctors self-reported, I felt like I could actually talk to the patient instead of constantly taking notes. Hospital also reported a 70% reduction in clinician-reported burnout. And it's also really important to note that the patient had to consent for the doctor to use this. They didn't just come in and start recording. If the patient didn't want it to be recorded, it was not. But of those who agreed to it, 97% rated the experience as very, very positive.
This is really interesting to me because there is a lot of confidentiality that you have to consider when using something like the DAX Copilot from Microsoft. But also, doctors are constantly late to their appointments. They constantly have to take notes, and it is hard to get doctors to listen to you. So where do you cross that line into using help from technology in order to get a better experience with your doctor? Yeah,
the fact that this is integrated into Epic, I think addresses most of those privacy concerns because Epic is under Canada's health doctor-patient rules there. So obviously, always be careful to look for audits and things. Right. But this is being done correctly. And patient consent has to be given, which is also, I think, extremely important. But like you say, I mean, the stereotype of a doctor, right, is not looking at you. Like if I pretend to be a doctor, what do? You take a notepad and pretend to write notes while you're talking to somebody, right? This gets rid of that. And the doctor said, wow, that was so much better. I could focus on my patient and look at them and talk to them instead of constantly having to write stuff down. So I think it allows you to see more patients and give better care at the same time. That's pretty great.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
I kind of want to try this out and see if it works.
Yeah, me too.
Bloomberg's sources say Apple has made progress on a chip to be used in smart glasses, similar to Meta's Ray-Bans. The chips are based on the same chips Apple uses in its watches. Apple wants to start mass production at TSMC by the end of 2026 or sometime in 2027.
So my takeaway on this is Apple's Ray-Ban competitor won't come out until late next year or maybe later. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Kind of interested in this too. I've started to use the Meta Ray-Ban AI smart glasses in testing for a review unit, and so far I'm kind of liking them. They're pretty fun to use. So it would be cool to see how Apple implements this.
Screenless fitness band maker. That just means it's a fitness band, not a watch. There's no screen on it. Whoop, WHOOP, Whoop launched first new bands in a few years called the Whoop 5.0 and the Whoop MG. MG stands for medical grade. Whoop has an interesting business model. If you're unfamiliar with it, a lot of sports celebrities were the first to use it, but they're now trying to appeal more widely. You don't buy the hardware. You buy the subscription, $199 annual subscription, and then you get the Whoop for no additional cost. If you want to have more than one band, you do have to pay, and it's anywhere from $49 to $199. The subscription gets you sleep tracking, women's health features, basics like that. There's also more expensive plans. The $239 Peak plan adds an estimate of your physiological age. This is a hot trend where people try to get their physiological age lower than their actual age. And then the $359 a year life plan goes along with that medical grade, the Whoop MG. That includes access to blood pressure tracking, electrocardiogram, and AFib and irregular heart rhythm notifications.
Ooh, what do you think about those costs?
Yeah, it's pricey. This is meant for, it's not ridiculous if this is useful for you. I think it's a little trendy, and I think it's meant for people who like the trend. Mm-hmm. It falls into the Aura class, like the Aura.
It does
for me, which is it's decent technology. I'm not sure how medically helpful it is over a typical smartwatch. from like Samsung or Apple. It is, but it looks nice, and it's interesting to just, pay for the service. And Whoop tries to say like its service is a little more comprehensive and provides a little better data analysis. And your mileage may vary on whether that's true or not, but a lot of people think it is.
Well, Nintendo updated its account agreement, which says in the UK that its digital products are, quote, licensed only for personal and non-commercial use, and that any unauthorized use of a digital product may result in the digital product becoming unusable. In the U.S., it says something slightly different. It says, quote, you acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part. So basically, if you try to pirate or emulate, Nintendo may brick your console.
So don't get caught.
That brings me back to my days of when I may or may not have hacked my Nintendo Wii by walking backwards in Zelda and pressing a couple of keys and downloading some extra apps. But not that I do that these days. There are emulators available, like devices that are offline, that are air gapped, basically, that you can use to download emulated games, pirated games. I don't own any of these devices, but I have seen them before. So if you don't want to brick your Nintendo device, there are alternatives.
I'm probably a little more worried about bricking the device accidentally when I try to jailbreak it than I am.
Right, me too.
So there's that. Google announced it will partner with Elemental Power on 3 sites for advanced nuclear reactors. Google wants to add at least 600 megawatts of capacity at each site. This is a trend where tech companies are partnering with power companies to build these small modular reactors. Elemental has not said which small modular reactor technology it's going to go with. The only reactors that qualify under the rather imprecise definition of what a small modular reactor is have been built in China. So these would be the first, or among the first, depending on when and if they get built outside of China.
How big we talking here?
Yeah, they're not pocket size. They're still pretty big.
Alibaba says it has a new technique called zero search that can cut the training costs of LLMs by 88%. The method simulates advanced search capabilities rather than interacting with actual search engines. That could save a lot on API costs.
Talking in a Stripe fireside chat, former Apple designer Johnny Ive said, there's not anything that I can be more preoccupied or bothered by than the potentially adverse effects smartphones have on their users.
I think even if you're innocent in your intention, I think if you're involved in something that has poor consequences, you need to own it. And that ownership personally has driven a lot of what I've been working on that I can't talk about at the moment, but look forward to being able to talk about some point in the future.
Ive has been working with OpenAI on something. So that's the thing that he can't talk about and he's not ready to share details on.
Okay. Intriguing.
A lot about safety. A lot of talking about AI safety in the design.
Well, LG Electronics announced it will build its third manufacturing plant in India. It will start with air conditioners and later expand to include washing machines, refrigerators, and compressors.
Those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper.
For a while, the worry was that the cost of chips might slow down innovation in generative models. Andy Beach thinks that may not be the case. Tom talked to him to find out why.
Andy, thanks again for joining us, man.
Hey, good to see you, Tom.
There has been quite a bit of concern that NVIDIA has a chokehold on the chips, and therefore chip prices might not decline as fast as they would otherwise. And there's been many efforts to figure out a way out of that. There seems to be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Where is this light coming from?
Yeah, I don't know if we're at the end of the tunnel, but we're still in the middle of the tunnel somewhere, but we're getting maybe a little more light shed on things. You're absolutely right. We've had a lot of constraints.
There's a dim glow somewhere up ahead.
Yeah,
Might be the end. We don't know.
There have been a lot of constraints around the number of GPUs that are out there, the optimization of the AI models that are run on top of it, and all of that has led to it being slower for adoption to really to get out there. And what Jassy was announcing in a recent investment,
Amazon CEO Andy Jassy, right?
Sorry, absolutely, yeah. Andy Jassy, Amazon CEO, thank you, was talking about the significant drop in cost as chip performance begin to improve. So, in other words, the new chips that are beginning to get announced are going to bring a much better price performance, as high as about 40%, which is pretty massive when you think about the scale of work that's being done. And that's coming with competitive pricing that's still there. And so what in effect it's going to allow them to do is have a lot more capabilities. It's almost like if it were a car, they just magically doubled the miles per gallon you could drive without changing anything else under the hood. And so what that means, I think, we've already seen a ton of innovation coming down, particularly he's just talking about this for AI across all industries. If I think about this in the media space, what it means in that particular sector is that some of the innovative work that they've been wanting to do, but they knew was impractical because a customer wasn't going to be willing to pay for it. Now it's going to suddenly be cost effective and the margins are going to be right so that they can start implementing it. So I think even though we've seen a lot of innovative work, I think we're going to see even more now because they know it's going to be at a price point that people can afford to actually pay.
How much of this is the efficiency of the chips and the different chips like Amazon's own Trainium chips? How much of it is the models? I mean, DeepSeek obviously made big waves by saying we're super efficient, and other models like Google Flash, Gemini Flash are following on that.
It's a balance. It's a dance between both. So in other words, hardware is a much slower train. You only get new chips occasionally. There's usually an announcement a year, and maybe there are a few new chips a year, but really the big chip innovations come every few years, right? And then what happens is once new hardware comes out, it's going to run at first under some assumptions, but as the software and the firmware that's associated with that hardware gets optimized, you start seeing more efficiency. So it's almost like going back to the car metaphor. Once you've got the new race car, once you've tuned it several times, you get more efficient with it and you can do the work less. And that's what we see. I often talk about the fact that we see the cost that it takes to run the same workload drop pretty significantly every 6 months right now. And that is because we get more efficient at the token consumption that it takes for the model to do the same level of work.
Does this mean you need fewer data centers then? Like, is this mean you need fewer chips, or is it, no, we still need lots and lots of data centers. It's just we'll have more customers.
We're already so strapped on capacity of chips and data centers for the work that we want to do right now. And there's so much more work we want to do with AI that there's absolutely still probably needs for that. And I don't see a horizon yet on when that part of the things start to slow down. We probably need to see more saturation of AI in our everyday workloads and lives before we get to a point where that begins to get rethought.
So what kind of effect would we see from this sort of efficiency gain then?
I think we'll see more things just drop into the solutions, the software, and then the consumer apps that we're dealing with in our daily lives. And we'll see it in a much faster, sort of more lower latent way so that it doesn't feel like I'm waiting on the AI to think and then respond.
Going back to Andy Jassy, Amazon seems to think that this could pay off into cementing their role. Do you think so?
I think this is their biggest bid in recent times to get there. I think they have very famously been sort of farther behind than Microsoft and Google in this race. They are much more reliant on third-party models and open source models than the other two, who have a lot more first-party models that are available. So I think this helps them in that category. They're not used to being behind. They're usually the big cloud and the front runner in a lot of places and in a lot of ways. So it probably helps them catch up in a way that they have, but it doesn't necessarily let them break away from the pack.
And then Google has been historically coming from behind in the cloud, but it's often positioned as behind OpenAI, but it's still quite a bit. It's still very close, if not even, with OpenAI and a lot of stuff.
I would say it's moved significantly fast in the last year or so to catch up. And I think where we actually see all of the model makers differentiating right now is in the application layer above the model itself.
And then Microsoft's early advantage was partnering with OpenAI, but that again is an advantage that is now dissipating as OpenAI wants to have more clients, which is understandable. Microsoft recently pulling back some of its longer term investments in data centers, which there could be a million reasons for. Where do you think they fall in this?
I think they're still one of the front runners because they did get to an early lead with the OpenAI relationship. That's far from the only model they work with. They have a model catalog that has, I think, over 2,000 models as of today that are available, and OpenAI is just a small fraction of those. I think where they have to keep trying to push innovation in order to stay in that front race is to work with the solution partners that bring this directly into the application. So the Adobes and others that put it in the consumer applications, but also the enterprise customers that are putting it in so that other businesses can take advantage of it.
You bring down the cost, more customers can take advantage of it. We talked about the big players and the big providers benefiting from that as well. What about the end user? What do I, as a consumer, what can I look for out of this?
Well, hopefully it's some cost savings, meaning that all of these new features aren't going to come with a premium upgrade on a subscription or an application that I have to go buy that has the functionality, even though I don't need it other than that. So hopefully it will be, I get more access to AI, but it's not another subscription fee I'm having to get or a more expensive tier that I'm having to do because the margins are right for the business.
Andy, thanks so much for chatting with us about this. If people want to follow your writing, where should they go?
You can find me on Substack at abeach.substack.com.
Fantastic. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Tom.
Hey, what would you like to hear us talk about on the show? One way to let us know is our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at reddit.com/r/Daily Tech News Show.
We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom, and today Milton is helping us understand.
Yeah, boy, the conversation on charging over USB and security concerns continues. Milton says, since the issue of USB condoms and the need for them keeps coming up, let me point out that Hack5 sells a bunch of USB cables and plugs manufactured by O.MG that are modified to allow remote hacking. Just go to Hack5's homepage. It's a real thing. You can buy it. We're familiar.
That's nice call out. Thank you, Milton.
No, thanks, Milton. That's good stuff.
What are you thinking about? Do you have some insights into some stories? Share it with us. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com.
Big thanks to Andy Beach and Milton for contributing to today's show. Thank you for being along for Daily Tech News Show. Daily Tech News Show made possible entirely by our patrons. We could not do it without you at patreon.com/DTNS. Big reminder, I'm doing a workshop in Austin, Texas, the weekend of June 27th. If you'd like to join, find out more at bestnewsever.com. This week's episodes of Daily Tech News Show Briefing were created by the following people. Host, producer, and writer Tom Merritt. Host and writer Jason Howell. Co-host Rob Dunwood. Co-host Jen Cutter. Co-host Wentway Dow. Co-host Shannon Morse. Producer Anthony Lemos. Producer Roger Chang. Editor Hammond Chamberlain. Editor Victor Bognot. Science correspondent Dr. Nikki Ackermans. Social media producer and moderator Zoe Dutterding. Our mods, Beatmaster, W. Scottus1, BioCow, Captain Kipper, Steve Guadarrama, Paul Reese, Matthew J. Stevens, a.k.a. Gadget Virtuoso, and JD Galloway. Mod and video hosting by Dan Christensen. Music provided by Martin Bell and Dan Luters. Art by Len Peralta. Acast ad support from Tatiana Matias. Patreon support from Tom McNeil. Our guests this week included Andy Beach, Bodie Grimm, and Brett Rounseville. And thanks to all the patrons who make the show possible.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.